Hello everyone, and welcome to Driving Vision latest webinar series on the BIM implementation. Hi, I'm JB.
Hi, I'm Stuart.
This is our third series, so if you haven't seen any of the previous ones on BIM management and BIM best practices, please go check them out on our website. This time, we'll be helping you to get started on your BIM journey.
That's right. There are many different facets to BIM, so it's important to understand how far you've come in order to come up with an effective plan to reach your destination. With that in mind, today we're going to talk about the common mistakes people make when trying to integrate BIM into their work practices. Then we'll move on the difficulties companies face when trying to change. And we'll finish off by explaining how to avoid them. We have a lot to cover here, so let's get started.
So Stuart, recently made the decision to use BIM, but the team has been quite resistant to the new procedures. And now we've gone over budget.
That's a problem. Did you explain the changes you were trying to make?
Or we just sent out an email, if that's what you mean.
You didn't give them any training?
What kind of training? They're experienced professionals. They should already know how to do these things, don't they? And we're too busy to give people time off to learn new things.
That's a risky strategy. How does that factor into your plan?
Well, so far we bought some expensive licenses for really fancy software. So that should just work, isn't it?
There's loads of great software available to help with BIM. How did you choose the ones you went with?
Well, we went with ones that had the most features.
Will you actually use all those features?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's all BIM, right? And we want to do BIM. So this seems like a perfect match. We just don't have the time to go over all the details with a fine-tooth comb.
So you went in with the idea to completely transform the way you work with a budget, but no plan, no understanding of your needs, and without talking to the people on your team who will be affected by the changes. And now you're wondering where you went wrong?
I must admit, when you put it like that, it does not seem right.
This is obviously an exaggerated case, but I'm sure we've all heard some form of these talking points at one time or another. Sadly, any one of these decisions made by JB's company will be enough to cause problems somewhere along the line. Which brings us to the next section, the challenges faced when trying to make structural changes to a company, like the implementation of BIM.
The first one is unreliable information. It might sound silly, but it's not always obvious what the problem actually is. Do you actually know what your needs are and when your processes can be improved? The person in charge of making the spending decisions isn't the person on the front line actually doing the work. So without proper communication, the decision maker might be missing some crucial information.
That's right, and this could have a knock-on effect too. Imagine going to a doctor and explaining some of your symptoms. The doctor will try to diagnose, but will probably get it wrong, prescribe the wrong medication. That in itself will create more problems further down the line, while not even addressing the ones you currently face. It's likely the decision maker in your company will only be trying to fix some symptom of the actual problem, so the problem will continue to persist until you get to the root cause. In order to identify the causes of the symptoms, performance measures are necessary.
Another way of picturing the problem might be a clogged sink. The obvious solution would be to use a drain deblocker liquid. This might work, at least for a while. The clog will go away if the issue is due to general kitchen usage. Definitely the most likely cause. But what if the problem was due to tree roots growing through the plumbing? Until you fix that, your sink will continue to periodically back up because you are only treating the symptom with your temporary solution. In this scenario, even though the outcome was identified to clear the sink, the diagnosis was not accurate, and the problem will persist.
The next challenge you might face: does your team have the right skills to achieve your goals?
Your team was built around the hard skills that were required when they were hired. Introducing new soft skills, a requirement from BIM, will face resistance as the team isn't adequately prepared.
Planning changes around the skills available to you can help avoid some common issues, such as lower likelihood of meeting objectives, speed of adoption will be slower, ultimate adoption will be lower, and less proficiency.
Communication is something we've touched on, but it's so central to success that we need to talk about it in more detail.
People like to understand why they've been asked to do things differently. Waiting until all the decisions have been made before talking to your team risks creating resistance from your team. Getting people on board with a new way of working requires closeness of relations and employee engagement.
You run the risk of poor morale and commitment if you don't offer direct feedback and positive reinforcement. When things break down, the barrier between management and the workers becomes greater, and change becomes more difficult to implement.
Not to mention that poor communication can result in a culture of distrust with the us versus them mentality. This can happen if goals and successes aren't adequately relayed. Employers begin to think that key information is being withheld and progress is hampered.
Finally, last but certainly not least, we have bad planning. I guess our main objective should be to avoid a situation like these guys here and make sure our plan A is viable.
Right. So many times, just a little bit of planning could have made such a huge difference. Take a look at this chart. Companies with excellent planning were 6 times more likely to obtain their objectives than ones with poor planning. Even fair planning is 3 times as likely to achieve your goals than poor planning.
These are pretty impressive numbers, but shouldn't really come as a surprise to anyone who has suffered through a badly planned transition. Take some time to work out the details. How will it impact people? What is contingency plan if some things go wrong? Bad planning can have wide-ranging consequences, including missed deadlines, overspending, unclear objectives, and worst of all, dissatisfied customers. With so many challenges companies are facing when trying to implement BIM, it's no wonder that 60% of attempts fail. This is not an easy task. And we definitely sympathize with the 25% of eco firms that still need to engage with BIM processes.
Thankfully, Driving Vision can offer you some help in our next section. We've shown you some common mistakes that people make, and we've covered some of the challenges of implementing change in an organization. Now let's give you some ideas for how to overcome these challenges so you can achieve your BIM goals.
As we've shown, introducing a change like BIM can be complicated. So there is no single magic bullet that will solve all the problems. Among experts, there are 2 schools of thought on making successful organizational change. Some say changing mindset or culture is a key factor for change. Others say this is too hard and that changing actions and reinforcing those actions is the best way to lead to change mindsets. As we've shown, introducing a change like BIM can be complicated. Oh, I've done that already. I know we've mentioned this a few times already, but communication is key here. Good communication is a core factor to make change work.
So how do we set about making sure we have adequate communication channels? The first thing we want to do is collect some reliable information about the state of the business. You want to ask yourself a wide range of questions about your capabilities, be they technical, operational, or business processes. Make sure that you understand what your company is and isn't capable of. Make sure you have a firm grasp of your company's culture. Do you know your company's attitude towards sustainability, training, or leadership styles? These things will affect your decision-making later on, so be sure to have a clear understanding. Finally, we'll need to ascertain what our technology is capable of. What type of hardware and software do we have? What can it do or not do?
With all of this information to hand, we can start to make a gap analysis. Gap analysis is a method of assessing the differences between the actual performance and expected performance in an organization or business. The term gap refers to the space between where we are, the present state, and where we want to be, the desired state.
And next, we'll need to identify the types of projects you're currently working on. Are they renovation, infrastructure, or whatever else? For each one of these, there's a few steps we need to take to make sure we're all set. Let's say, for instance, we're preparing a large infrastructure project. We need to assemble a team, including a BIM manager, design manager, structural engineers, any type of specialist engineers, contractor, frontline staff, leaders from all practices, the client, and their advisors. Basically, anyone will be relevant to this project. Once everyone is in the same room and talking from the same hymn sheet, a strategic plan needs to be hammered out. This is when you decide the objectives of the project and what benefits you are expecting. This is a really important step to achieving that great communication we were talking about. Make sure you get everyone on the same page.
Now we can move on to planning how the implementation project is set up. The project manager, together with a team made of a client, a design manager, engineers, and a contractor, will arrange all the formal aspects of the project. This includes finding the right people to work on the project, establishing a project organization, creating a project plan, setting up a project budget, holding a project kickoff, and other activities. The project team must also gather the requirement and plan the steps for the next phase. Make sure they answer the question, what do we need to do? Without knowing the detailed requirement, the project cannot do anything.
The next phase we are planning for is the design and construction phase. At this stage, the discussion is concerned with all the tasks to turn the project goal into reality. It will involve defining the BIM process. As you can guess, this takes time. That's why this is usually the phase that takes the longest. In terms of complexity, this phase will almost be the most challenging to manage because there are so many activities taking place in a very tight sequence.
Continuous improvement is a key aspect to BIM. You'll want to clearly define your goals regarding new technologies you'll want to use and when they need to be operational by. What processes would you benefit from having automated? How can all these new ways of working and tools be integrated? By the end of the meeting, you should have come up with a plan and set some milestones for these aspects of the project. This will help you further down the line to measure how successful you were, so don't gloss over this step. It's actually a very important aspect of the whole process. So we'll be talking more about this in more detail next month in our next episode.
Finally, we will want to plan for sustainability. This might be a new concept to many in our industry, but the need for sustainability in construction is urgent. Around half of all non-renewable resources mankind consumes are used in the construction industry, making it one of the least sustainable industries in the world. That needs to change, and it all starts in this initial meeting. Sustainable designs need to be justified for the various stakeholders. The two most important considerations are the environmental and economic impacts. While sustainability is important, it has to be feasible and viable. Sustainable design is achievable only when it has a positive impact on both these areas.
Do you remember how we've been going on and on about communication? Well, that shouldn't stop once the meeting is over. We would recommend celebrating the wins you experience on the project with your whole team on a monthly basis. This should help to get everyone on board with the importance of BIM. Since this, we'll see how this new way of working can improve their work.
And that's it. Once all these things have been agreed, you have a solid plan for your project. Not only will you be more confident about what your responsibilities and deliverables are, you will also have a clear understanding of everyone else's. And this plan isn't just limited to the one project. Much of this work can be reused in future projects through the use of templates. There's no need to reinvent the wheel every time for every project.
So just to wrap up now, planning efficiently requires that you know the desired outcome of the project to make sure that, one, you understand which innovations, interventions have to be introduced in your processes. The right infrastructure and process data is in place. You have identified what training and coaching are needed. You have a mechanism to evaluate the progress made and a feedback process to take into account the stakeholders' recommendation to optimize and automate the processes, introduce and unify the right technology, and all team members are interdependent.
Whether you are starting a BIM implementation or already advanced in the implementation, to be successful, you need to do several things. Make an audit of the current situation, determine why you want to implement BIM and the benefits you expect, make a gap analysis between the current situation and the desired situation, select a pilot project, and plan the implementation. Communicate with the organization you're implementing BIM and get their buy-in, and communicate the changes and celebrate the wins.
That is for today. As a thank you to everyone who attended today, we would like to offer a free BIM readiness diagnostic, normally charged at £1,250.
In this diagnostic, we evaluate your BIM capabilities, if your culture is compatible with the BIM philosophy, and the investment required to make you BIM Level 3 ready. Your BIM readiness report will tell you your capabilities gap, the changes required to align your culture with the BIM philosophy, which technologies you could use to automate your processes and actions to close the gaps, and how much money you will need to invest to get the BIM that is right for you. A driving vision expert will conduct the interviews online, and we will issue a report and discuss our findings together and we'll decide the best way to implement the solutions at your pace and according to your budget. And don't forget, this diagnostic is free. So make the most of it. And just before we go, I want to let you know about the next episode happening on the 16th of June at 13:30. You're already signed up if you attended today, but go ahead and put it in your diaries. And